Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is a great pleasure and an honor for me to introduce to you an eminent scientist and a scholar of Quran. Dr. Maurice Bucaille, pronounced as Maurice Bucaille, am I right, doctor? Doesn't matter. Okay. Is a native of France. He is a medical doctor and his specialty is surgery. Sometime along his career, he became interested in the study of Quran, and he studied Quran in French translation. And later, he also read Quran in English translation, and he was pointed out the inadequacy of the translations. As a result, at age 50, he took upon learning the Arabic language, and he became a learned scholar in Arabic, and he found out the real inadequacy of the translations and problems. And being a scientist himself, he took upon himself to explain the biblical narratives and the Quran and science. And he wrote his book in French back in 1971, I believe, which was later translated and published in late 70s in English language. The book is The Bible, the Quran and Science. It's an excellent book. And then he came across the problem of the controversy between evolution and the creation. And he tackled that problem, and he wrote the book, What is the Origin of Man? And both the books are here in paperback, and some of the old version of this one will be available after the lecture outside, and this in the original new version is will be available outside, and those of you who would not have can order through your bookstore here. We will have it available. Now, he is writing a third book which is complete and ready for publication. It's the medicine and the mummies of pharaohs. And there you know, the Musa alayhi salam was born at one pharaoh, and when he crossed the Red Sea, there was another pharaoh who was drowned. And he has done extensive research, and he came up with conclusions that there are two different pharaohs, not the same one. I will not take any more time, and you will know him through his lectures, Dr. Maurice Bucaille.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you very much for your kind introduction. It is my pleasure to be among you this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. There is no human work prior to modern times that contains statements which were equally in advance of the state of knowledge at the time they appeared, and which might be compared to the Quran. There is perhaps no better illustrations of the close links between Islam and science than the Prophet's hadith. اطلب العلم ولو في الصين. Seek after science even in China, which is a veritable invitation to man to enrich his knowledge. More significant, if it is possible, is the famous hadith, Midadul ulama afdalu min dami shuhada. The scholar's ink is more precious than the martyr's blood. It comes as no surprise, therefore, to learn that religion and science have always been considered to be twin sisters by Islam, and that today, at a time when science has taken such great strides, they still continue to be associated. And furthermore, certain scientific data are used for the better understanding of the Quranic text. What is more, in a century where for many, scientific truth has dealt a death blow to religious belief. It is precisely the discoveries of science that, in an objective examination of the Islamic revelation, have highlighted the supernatural character of certain aspects of the revelation. When all is said and done, generally speaking, scientific knowledge would seem, in spite of what people may say, to be highly conducive to reflection on the existence of God. Once we begin to ask ourselves in an unbiased or unprejudiced way about the metaphysical lessons to be derived from some of today's knowledge, for example, our knowledge of the infinitely small or the problem of life, we indeed discover many reasons for thinking along these lines. When we think about the remarkable organization presiding over the birth and maintenance of life, it surely becomes clear that the likelihood of it being the result of chance gets less and less as our knowledge and progress in this field expand. To me, it would seem that the scientific progress made in understanding the fantastic complexity of higher beings provides strong arguments in favor of the opposite theory. In other words, the existence of an extraordinarily methodical organization presiding over the remarkable arrangement of the phenomena of life. In many parts of the book, the Quran leads in simple terms to this kind of general reflection, but it also contains infinitely more precise data which are directly related to facts discovered by modern science. These are what exercise a magnetic attraction for today's scientists. For many centuries, man was unable to study them because he did not possess sufficient scientific means. It is only today that numerous verses of the Quran dealing with natural phenomena have become comprehensible. A reading of all the commentaries, however knowledgeable their authors may have been in their day, bears solemn witness to a total inability to grasp the meaning of such verses. I should even go so far as to say that in the 20th century, with its compartmentalization of ever-increasing knowledge, it is not always easy for the average scientist to understand everything he reads in the Quran on such subjects without having recourse to specialized research. This means that to understand all such verses of the Quran, one is today required to have an absolutely encyclopedic knowledge, by which I mean one which embraces very many disciplines. The Quran is a religious book which has no scientific purpose. Whenever man is invited to reflect upon the works of creation and numerous natural phenomena, the obvious intention is to stress divine omnipotence. In these reflections, we find allusions to data connected with firmly established scientific knowledge. These findings clearly appeared only in modern times. When one compares religious teachings with material data, one must carefully take account of the meaning of the words of the Quranic text. This is a suggestive example in a verse of the Suratul Araf about the creation. Inna rabbakumullahu alladhi khalaqa samawati wal arda fi sittati ayamin. The common translation is, Your Lord is God who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. Nevertheless, we know that the Arabic word ayyam, the usual translation of which is days, appears in the Quran with the meaning of very long periods of time. Examples are given in my book, The Bible, the Quran and Science. No equivalence exists with the precise meaning of the word in the Bible, where the days of the week are considered, the seventh one being the Sabbath, when God is described in the Bible as having rested. The Quran does not mention it at all. The major notion to be derived from the Quran concerning the creation is a concomitance in the celestial and terrestrial evolutions, with the fundamental data about the existence of an initial unique gaseous mass whose elements, although at first fused together, subsequently became separated. These notions are expressed in the Surah Fussilat. Thumma istawa ila samai wa hiya duhanun. Then God turned to the heaven when it was a smoke, and in the Surah Al-Anbiya. أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا. Do not the unbelievers see that the heavens and earth were joined together, then we clothed them asunder? The separation process resulted in the formation of multiple words, a notion which crops up a dozen times in the Quran when it has formed the second verse in the Surah Al-Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Praise be to God, the Lord of the world. All this is in perfect agreement with modern ideas on the existence of a primary nebula and the process of secondary separation of the elements that had formed the initial unique mass. This separation resulted in the formation of galaxies, and then, when these divided, of stars from which the planets were to be born. All that is in perfect agreement with modern notions concerning the history of the universe. Moreover, reference is made in the Quran to an intermediary creation between the heavens and the earth, as in Surah Al-Furqan, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا. We have created the heaven, the earth, and what is between them. This intermediary creation corresponds to the modern discoveries of bridges of matter which have been demonstrated as present outside organized astronomical systems. Or can we imagine that a man, much more than 1,000 years ago, could have been the author of such reflections which proceed from a general concept of the universe, when this concept was not formed until centuries after his death? In the Quran, we find notions about the nature and the movement of celestial formations. For example, the sun and the moon, which were previously defined in the Bible as luminaries, are distinguished in the Quran by the use of different epithets: light, nur for the moon, torch, siraj for the sun. Presently, we know that the first is an inert body which reflects light. The second is a celestial formation in a state of permanent combustion and a source of light and heat. The word star, najm, in the Quran is accompanied by another qualifying it, which indicates that it burns and consumes itself as it pierces through the shadows of the night. It is the word Thaqib. The word Kawkab definitely seems to mean the planets, which are celestial formations that reflect and do not produce light like the sun. Today we know that the celestial organization is balanced by the position of the stars in defined orbits and the interplay of gravitational forces related to their mass and speed of movement, each with its own motion. Orbit and own motion are the foundation of this balance. They are precisely what the Quran describes in the Surah Al-Anbiya. وَهُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. God is the one who created the night, the day, the sun, and the moon. Each one is traveling in an orbit with its own motion. This movement is expressed by the verb sabaha, yasbahun in the text. The primitive meaning of the word, I said, the primitive meaning of the word, carrying the idea of a motion which comes from any moving body, be it the movement of one leg as one runs or the action of swimming in water. The sequence of day and night is expressed in terms that today are highly significant from a scientific point of view by using the verb kawara, second form. So the Surah Al-Zumar describes the night, describes the way the night winds or coils itself about the day, just as in the original meaning of the verb, a turban is wound around the head, a totally valid comparison. The evolution of the heavens and the notion of a settled place for the sun are also mentioned. They are in agreement with well-established modern ideas. More than that, the Quran seems to have alluded to the expansion of the universe. There is also the conquest of space. This has been undertaken thanks to remarkable technological progress and has resulted in man's journey to the moon. And this surely springs to mind when we read the Surah Al-QUR'AN. Ya ma'shar al-jinni wal-insi, in istata'tum an tanfuzu min aktari samawati wal-ardi fanfuzu, la tanfuzuna illa bisultanin. O assembly of jinns and men, if you can penetrate regions of the heavens and the earth, then penetrate them. You will not penetrate them save with a power. This power comes from the Almighty, the subject of the whole surah being an invitation to recognize God's beneficence to man.